Howdy folks, Riflechair here. Welcome to another episode, and today we're going to talk a little bit about barrel maintenance. So one of the problems of that hunters and competitive shooters have, and also people in the military have, and the law enforcement community, is running with pitted bores, the bore of your rifle or your pistol. What kind of effect that has on your firearm? So what this video was intended to do is just kind of look at things in simple terms, give you some graphical examples using my driveway, and that's the closest thing I have to a scaled-in replica of the inside of your barrel. So let's get to it. You know, why do we clean our firearms after we use them every single time? So here we have a piece of concrete. And in the concrete, you can see these lines where it's been brushed. Okay, so you could try to consider this to be the sandy surface to be scaled down into the interior of your barrel. We're talking about a metal surface making contact with another metal surface. One being steel, being, for example, this piece of concrete that's been brushed, and the other being the projectile that's moving along the inside of your barrel. Now, what these things do is this abrasive surface that you see here, you have a copper gilded or a jacketed bullet running through your barrel at high velocity, is going to leave trace deposits in all of the micro depressions that are in the steel, or in this case, this piece of concrete. Okay, now what happens is that you can try to imagine if I had a piece of clay, I could just kind of smear the clay onto this rough surface. That would be the copper deposits left from every single firing in that rifle, and as you'll see, slowly over time, the copper accumulates, and it accumulates with every firing as it's dragged across the rough surface of the interior of your barrel. One of the reasons why people like to have their barrels lapped is to try to smooth the surface out so that the copper fouling on the inside of the barrel doesn't have anywhere near as much of an impact, especially for competitive shooters. Now, for those of you who are competitive shooters, you might just be a hunter. You want to try to stabilize the buildups in your barrel as best you can, and so it's one of the reasons why people like to get their barrels lapped and so on. Having said that, what happens if you neglect your rifle? Okay, it's a process called galvanic corrosion, where the two gilded surfaces, steel and copper, being metals of a different composition and in density, they will go through a process called galvanic corrosion. All right, and so that's where you have those two different metal densities in the proximity of a what do they call it? An electrolyte. It could be water, it could be solvent in your barrel, residue, oil, and so on. So that those two metal surfaces will actually sit there and have some kind of an electrical circuit, like a battery. So those things sit there and fizzle away, a kind of a chemical electronic interaction going on, and before you know it, your barrel is getting pitted, right? And that's rust. And what's happening is that the lighter deposits in the steel, the other components, it could be just metals of compositions, could be that have different chemical properties of the steel that are going to corrode faster than other areas. So you get kind of a pitted appearance to the steel. And essentially what it kind of looks like is my driveway. So you're going from a concrete surface like this to this. So which do you think is going to have more an effect on bullet drag and should we say elevated levels of deposits in your barrel? Well, it's obviously going to be something like this, because it is just so much rougher. It's pitted, it's rusted. Okay, and so those are some of the things you need to take into consideration, is why you always oil your barrel. I mean, you've just been out hunting. You've been out in the rain, you've been out in different temperatures. Now you bring it into a warm climate. What happens? Well, it's like taking a cold frosty glass from your freezer and putting it on the counter. What happens? You get condensation, and the cold temperature, you get you get moisture attached to those surfaces that are cold when you bring them into a warm environment. It's called condensation, and you get rust. So you bring something cold into a warm environment, you better make sure you give it a pull through. This stuff just continually neglect year after year after year, and then suddenly you've taken something that may have been an extremely expensive, highly tuned, beautiful piece, and it's garbage because of your neglect. Okay, there's things that you can do. What a lot of people do is they look down the bore and says, wow, it looks nice and shiny. That's because of all the copper deposits that are in your barrel. If you were to actually take a copper cutter, like foaming bore cleaner or something to that effect, or gun slick foaming products, and remove those copper deposits from your barrel, you may find that it doesn't look like this anymore. Or I should say this. It's going to look more like this. Okay, it's called neglect. And so if you want to try to maintain the value of your firearm and the consistent shooting repeatability year after year after year after year, every time you take it out, you clean it. You maintain, and you actually slowly over time burnish your barrel. In many ways, a form of fire lapping. With every single round you shoot, you're burnishing the barrel, but you gotta stabilize the copper deposits in your barrel after X amount of shootings at least. Don't just let it sit there, because you'll get that galvanic corrosion process in your barrel, and it will significantly decrease over time the accuracy and precision of your firearm. Hope you're all doing well, folks. Riflechair signing off, and as always, Maple Leaf out.